Hey scholars, we're back with Brett Alger from NOAA, and we're going to ask him a few questions, a little bit more questioning today because you guys came up with so many good questions about NOAA and his job. In our class, we've been talking about the Asian carp situation and also other invasive species throughout the United States. First of all, what do you think are those most damaging invasive species on America's coast today?
Well, I mean, just from my background and what I know, I would say in the Great Lakes, the biggest one that you hear about the most would be zebra mussels. It's a filter-feeding organism that got back in the Great Lakes, 100 years ago or whatever it is, and they filter feed, and so they filter out bad sediment, toxins and whatnot, but they filter out a lot of good things too, a lot of zooplankton and phytoplankton and things that are kind of in the bottom of the food chain. And so you've got, millions and millions and millions of these things that are attaching themselves to boats and intakes of pipes and things like that. People step on them, cut their feet. So they have like a lot of aesthetical kind of things that are, bad because they look bad and people, don't like them. But then also they filter feed, they take out the good things that are in the water, which affects the food web. And so you get, for instance, in Lake Erie, a long time, there was tons of toxins and pollutants, and the zebra mussels got in and they filtered out the water, and now Lake Erie is very clean. Well, you look at Lake Huron, there's very little or no fishing there anymore because they've filtered out a lot of smaller particles and sediments that are good for the food system, the food web, and therefore the smaller fish don't have as much to eat, therefore the bigger fish don't have as much to eat. And now you're left with a situation where in Lake Huron, you can see the bottom of the water in 80 foot because it's so clear. There's no sediment. There's nothing in the food chain. Zebra mussels would be the big one that I've heard the most about.
So in Michigan, it sounds like on one hand in Lake Huron, there's been kind of an over-oligotrophic kind of situation.
Yep.
Another one, they've kind of contributed to the decrease in eutrophic lakes, right?
Yep, exactly.
Cool. Well, with the Asian carp, what do you think is being, what do you know is being done to fix the Asian carp problem?
Well, the Asian carp have only been in the Great Lakes system or the Mississippi River system now for just a decade or two, not very long. So a lot of people right now are doing a lot of research trying to figure out what they can about the life history, what do they eat, how often do they spawn, all that kind of stuff. To prevent them from getting specifically into the Great Lakes, there's a number of things that they've considered. They have a couple of electrical barriers that are trying to prevent the fish from passing through the barriers and getting into the Great Lakes. Now, if you think about it, though, what's to stop somebody from catching a couple of these fish, driving them in a truck in a cooler, and throwing them on the other side? And so electrical barrier only does so much. Some of the other stuff that they've done is they've actually put a chemical in the water that will kill, basically all the fish that are in that segment of the stream, which certainly isn't a good thing, but it's trying to prevent them from getting through and also learn about are they there or not. Certainly, if you put the chemical in and kill the fish, you would see the dead fish and you would find carp if they're there or not. One thing I've found out about working for NOAA Fisheries is a lot of things are very political as well. And so you have the governors and the senators and the congressmen of each of the Great Lakes states, Michigan, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin, all the states and even Canada that have some interest in the Great Lakes. They're pressing the greater, Congress to pass laws to physically block the lock, so close up the river system that connects Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River. So there's a few things that are being done to stop them.
Do you believe, in your own opinion, that the Asian carp will ever be eliminated from the U.S. now that they've already been brought in?
I actually have never ever heard of an invasive that took hold and was eventually then eliminated. If you talk about sea lampreys, zebra mussels, Bithotrephes, which is the spiny water flea, round goby, the list goes on in the Great Lakes. And I've never heard of any of those species being eliminated because sometimes you just can't stop nature. Once they're there, they find their niche in the ecosystem, in the food web, and they thrive and they do well. And so I don't see them eliminating them from the Mississippi River system. I think time will tell to see if they make it and can survive in the Great Lakes. Because it's a different food web, different water temperatures, different habitat. There's a number of factors that still remain to be played out to see if the Asian carp could survive in the Great Lakes. But I don't see them, just being eliminated completely. I think they're there to stay, and eventually you're just going to have to learn to manage with them in the picture.
We watched a quick video in my classes on about the redneck fishing tournament. What do you is that an effective measure to manage that, or what do you think about the redneck fishing tournament?
Well, there are certain situations, certain systems, certain fisheries where fishing effort can have a positive effect. For instance, like let's say largemouth bass. If you have a population of bass that are all relatively small in size, and you continually allow people to angle and catch the fish and pull them out of the lake, you thin out the herd, so to speak, and it allows more room to grow for the fish that are left behind. In an instance, though, where you're talking about trying to control a population, I don't see how having the kind of the redneck tournaments where they're shooting them with a bow and arrow, or they're electroshocking them or stuff like that. You're not going to control a population that way. You're not going to stop them from reproducing. You're not going to stop them from eating. And as fast and quickly as they've grown in their numbers, I think the tournaments are kind of cool as long as they're done within the laws and people aren't getting hurt, and you always want to be safety conscious. But I don't think they're going to necessarily stop the Asian carp or prevent them from moving upwards.
Going back to my students, heard you work, done a lot of different jobs. Have you ever been hit? And if so, have you ever been hit by an Asian carp or worked with them hands on?
So I used to work for the Illinois DNR, or specifically the Illinois Natural History Survey, and we did electroshock, just like you probably have seen in videos. We did that on a number of lakes and rivers. Specifically, though, I never worked on ones that had Asian carp in them. I never worked on the Mississippi River, and so I never have been, hit by one of them. But there are a number of other fish that act in a very similar way when you electroshock them. That they don't jump way out of the water, but they do kind of get up and out of the water a little bit. I've never been hit by one, so to speak, but I have caught some really, really large fish, big muskie. And those things certainly they can thrash pretty good. It's not happy to be out of the water. So I've gotten whacked a few times by some bigger fish.
Well, it sounds like you've worked on a number of different bodies of water over the course of your career. What bodies of water do you work on the most, you would say, in your overall career, and which one do you like working on the best, and why?
Well, I started on the Great Lakes working for the DNR, and then I moved down to Illinois and was working on a lot of inland lakes. And then I moved back to Michigan and worked for the Fish and Wildlife Service, and I worked on streams and rivers with the sea lamprey job that I had. And now I work on the ocean. So I've seen about everything I could in terms of what type of body of water. I think the ocean is the most interesting and the most fun because it's so big, it's so expansive. There's so many different species, there's so many different issues. I've enjoyed working on the ocean, I think, the best. But certainly when you work on little streams in the middle of Michigan, and it's a little more hands-on, and you can see the fish swimming in the river, that's pretty cool too. But I think I like working on the ocean the most.
All right. And going back to the ocean, what is do you think the most damaging method of commercial fishing that's out there right now?
Well, that's a kind of a debated thing. Some people would argue maybe it's a long lining or gill netting. I think, in my opinion, it's probably bottom trawling. So there's vessels that pull these large nets. These boats are upwards of 150, 200 feet long, some smaller, but they pull nets behind their boat. And some of them are mid-water trawls, so they pull them, off the bottom, up in the water column a little bit. But there's a lot that do it right on the bottom of the ocean. And so they're looking to catch flounder species, cod, haddock, pollock. And so not only do those fishermen and their nets catch a lot of fish, some intended, some unintended, those things are also rolling typically or dragging along the bottom of the ocean. And so if they're in an area where there's a lot of coral reef or specific habitat, they're also ruining the habitat. And so it's kind of a twofold thing. Not only are they maybe getting bycatch and fish that they don't want, but they're also ruining the bottom, which could be potential habitat for other fish. And so that's the one gear type that we keep track of, I would say, the most, that we have the most problems with. You also have fishermen who set we would call fixed gear. So lobster traps, lobster pots, crab gear you guys would maybe see around here, or they're setting gill nets. Well, those things are fixed. They stay in place by anchors and buoys. Well, trawlers will come through, and they're a moving gear. They're an active gear. They're pulling through areas. They catch people's lobster traps in their gill net gear. And so in that sense, you get a lot of fishermen that are fighting with each other because guys that are setting lobster traps don't like the trawlers, and the trawlers are complaining because the lobster guys are in their way. So not only do the bottom trawlers, have effects on the fish and the habitat, they have effects on other fishermen.
So we just kind of mentioned bycatch. What kind of bycatch do you see caught most with specific types of netting or in your area of the Northeast?
Well, in the fishery I work on, the groundfish, there's 14 different species, and they all kind of interact with one another. They all live in similar areas, and so fishermen, maybe they're out to catch cod, but they end up catching yellowtail flounder. And so even though it's a species that they're maybe kind of after, I would say, they're really targeting cod. So bycatch can be many things. Sometimes it's other fish that they're not wanting to catch. Certainly, maybe what you're leading to is certainly sometimes maybe people catch like a shark or a whale or a seal or something like that in their net, whether they're trawling or gill netting. But really, we have our protected resources division. We kind of work with them in setting our regulations and implementing our laws. We work with them very closely. So anytime we implement or allow a gear type, we have them do various analysis and research as to, okay, by setting this gear or using this gear in this area during this time of the year at this depth, all that kind of stuff, they provide us feedback with, okay, where's the right whale population currently, or where the pilot whales are, that kind of stuff. So I would say in the last good 5 to 10 years, that's been a big hot topic idea is bycatch, dolphins, whales, seals, all that kind of stuff. And we've done a really good job of reducing the bycatch. I've seen statistics where maybe in an entire fishing year, only just a handful are actually caught and killed in the nets. And so, on the big scheme of things, talking about the millions and millions and millions of metric tons of pounds that are caught by fishermen, to only have, just a handful of seals or whales is, in the big scheme, is a pretty good thing.
Yeah. So we went on my class, we looked at the kind of the history of fishing, and we've noticed that, back in the early 1900s, 1800s, a huge number of kind of the fishing population on the decline, even up into today. Do you still see in your field of study a decline in fisheries in the most recent years?
Well, yes and no. There's some fisheries that are in decline currently. The numbers don't lie. We've seen catch go down further and further and further. But we also have a number of stocks, such as Gulf of Maine haddock, Georges Bank haddock. Those would be specific stocks of haddock that are on the increase, when for a long time they were very low. So you see a little both. You see some going down, some going up. Looking broader picture for the entire world's oceans, there's been studies that have said, Daniel Pauly is a professor, and he's gone out and said, by the year 2050, we may only have jellyfish left in the ocean, because there's so much commercial fishing, there's so much other types of activities going on. There's global, climate change. There's oil spills. All these different things are having such a detrimental effect that we could lose all of our fish species. There's other people, though, on the other side of things that would say, no, settle down. It's not that bad. We're making strides. Global climate change isn't as bad as we maybe think. We're doing different things to protect fish, protect whales, protect all those types of things, and things are actually improving. So it's there's both sides of the debate. From my perspective, we've done a lot of things in the last 5 to 10 years that have helped a lot of fishing stocks. And the fishermen would even agree that you talk to guys that have fished for 60, 70 years that say, I remember back in the 60s, we didn't see a single cod on this shoreline, and now there's hundreds of thousands. So things are changing for the good and the bad, but I think things are moving in a positive direction.
That's good. How do you kind of prevent it from going back to where it was? How do you prevent overfishing and things of that nature?
Well, there is a law that Congress enacted back in 1976 that basically was a fishing law for the entire country. And it's been revised and reenacted a few times. It's now called the Magnuson-Stevens Act. And what it does in its most recent version is mandate that we set annual catch limits for every stock of fish in the entire country, whether that be where I'm at or in other parts of the country. So we have a law put in place by Congress, the president signed, that states, okay, this is the amount of fish that you're going to be allowed to catch for the entire year. No matter if you let one person catch all those fish or 10,000 people catch all those fish, this is the absolute amount of fish you're allowed to catch. If you go above that, the next fishing year, there's going to be consequences. You're going to lower the trip limits. You're going to shorten the season. You're going to do various things to lower the catch. So we have what we call annual catch limits, and we have accountability measures. So we set the annual catch limit for every stock, for Georges Bank cod, Gulf of Maine haddock, Georges Bank haddock, all the different stocks and all the different species. We monitor them for the entire year, getting all those dealer reports in, all those boat reports in. And we keep track of that, and we get to the end of the year and we say, okay, where did we end up? Did we end up over? Did we end up under? And then certainly in the next year we make adjustments and either allow more fishing or allow less.
Well, I'm gonna give Brett another chance to kind of catch his breath again, and we'll kind of come back and conclude this interview in just a moment.